actually talking about here. Today, of course, the esteemed history fanatic, Mr. Thijs Rommelse, is going to, how would we say, he's going to self-destruct, he's going to undermine some of the myths that have been talked about last week. And I would like you all to welcome Mr. Rommelse in History as Seen Through the Eyes of Animals.
Well, I am going to sort of self-destruct in the sense that I will attempt to deconstruct what history is, and I also aim to deconstruct your perception of history, what history is. The first question is, of course, can we see history through the eyes of animals, or do animals have a history? And if so, are they aware of their own history? Now, that raises a couple of problems. First of all, what is an animal? And you'll see how that is way more problematic than would appear on first sight. Secondly, what is history? And if so, how do we see history? Can animals, in fact, see history? Let's sort of start with a slightly easier question. Do animals have a history? I would say that is, in fact, the easiest of these questions. Well, what you see here is an image that you're probably familiar with. It's about 17,000 years old, and it is the oldest picture we have. Oh, he is welcome if you. Well, if they want to, guys, if you're interested. No. Anyway, what we have here is an image about 17,000 years old. It shows us the prehistoric caves of Lascaux, and we see large paintings of buffaloes, bulls, cows, deer, etc., etc., etc. So, history, or sort of historical animals. The thing is, we can only see their history through our own interference. And with that I mean that obviously the animals have not created these images themselves, they are man-made. They're man-made pictures. So if we want to study animal history, it's obviously through human interference. Now, let's look at something slightly different. What are animals in our own history, in our own lives? What role do they play in our lives? Well, first of all, you can say they are a source of material required. We eat them, we use them for glue, we burn them as fuel, we use them for leather, for clothing, for shoes, to write on as parchment, building materials, jewelry, a lot of functions, and obviously they're functional in our lives. But there's way more to be said about this. Obviously, they're also means of transport. We use them to drag, to pull, to sit on, to carry us. We use them as weapons. Think of a knight on a big stallion aiming to kill an opponent, or look at Hannibal using elephants as weapons. We use them as friends or companions. Your pet goldfish, your guinea pig, or whatever you have. We also use them, and this is perhaps less obvious, as tools or messengers of divine intervention. With that I mean the messengers of the gods. What we have here is pictures, well obviously the second one's slightly less orthodox, pictures of the Egyptian gods, and what you can take from this is animals obviously were a sort of messenger from the gods. In fact, in this case they were the gods. They have human, have animal. Here are some more pictures that show you what animals have been like in our lives throughout history. So we have slaughtered them, we have sacrificed them, we have ridden them, we have made them fight for our amusement. One interesting thing is, okay, if we see them as messengers of divine inspiration, what they really do is they tell us who we are, because animals, we take it, are archetypical, they are nature, they represent nature. So that means they are pure, they are brutal, they are instinct driven. Okay, they are not self-aware because, well, as I said, they are instinct driven, and as such, they are tools rather than self-aware. They represent cruelty, brutality. And you know what, if you think about this, what we do is animals are our own negative mirror image. You know, we are everything an animal is not, and vice versa. The animal is everything, we are not. We think, we are self-aware, we construct things, we seem to be in charge of our environment, whereas animals are passive, animals are dumb, and they are instinct-driven. And so we use them, we create an image, a stereotype of animals to really define who we are. So what does that make us as man, guys in the back? Well, it makes us hunters, farmers, producers, breeders, as in we breed animals. And you know what the point is? We are dominant creators. We create stuff. We are, in fact, in charge of our own environment. And that is how we see ourselves. We use animals. We create a stereotype of animals to define who we are. And you know what? Exercising control over animals is something that we believe is vital to define who we are. Now, this idea of animals being the opposite of man, where does that derive from? Well, obviously, the Bible, first of all. The Bible says, or the Bible dictates, that God created man as self-conscious, as intelligent. The crown of creation, really. We are the crown of creation. Just read Genesis. And you know what? We were punished for this. Adam and Eve were thrown out of paradise for being nosy, essentially. Doing something out of self-consciousness that God had forbidden them to do. Whereas, on the other hand, as I said, animals are props in our lives. You know what? They're really the props that sort of revolve around it, you know, in the show that revolves around us. We are the main characters in the show, and they are props. So that means that animals are mute, passive, dumb, and made to be dominated. Now, let's look at history, what history really is. History as a scientific discipline stems from the 19th century, and it was very much warped around the idea of the opposite natures of man and animal. We, man, we, humanity, we have a history. Animals do not. This follows from the Bible, and this also follows from an Aristotelian worldview. So history is, per definition, or so it was at first seen, something that only deals with man, us. I've got some more pictures to show to you, by the way. Throughout time, we've begun to study them, obviously from a scientific point of view. Here we have biologists sort of examining the exact anatomy of animals. And we've even begun to classify them. On the right, we have, of course, Darwin and the classification of animals and of humanity. And this is very much our 21st century take on animals, or it could be one of them. Them being symbols, them representing concepts of, say, sportivity or success in sports, or the kilo collar for that matter. They have become, marketing concepts almost. That is what animals are in our lives nowadays. And as I said, we've used them as weapons, tools of communication. Oh, this one's quite interesting if you look at this picture. What you see here, this is angels bringing the message, the word of Christ's birth to the shepherds. And what do we see here? The shepherds are completely ignorant of what is happening. We see the angel, or in fact 2 angels, with a scroll of parchment, reading out the message of the word, and all animals, plus the shepherd, are completely ignorant of what is going on, except for that one dog. You see that one dog barking. So what is the point here? What is so very interesting about this? The artist who made this is telling us, hey man, you have sinned. You are infidels in a sin, that you are ignorant towards divine messages. The animal that is stupid, that is mute, that is passive, is aware. So here, the animal is really represented as a messenger to tell people, to inform people that really they should be sensitive towards the Holy Word. If we're not in control of nature, ladies and gentlemen, that is something out of the ordinary. We are man, we are creators, we are self-conscious, we dominate nature, and so that means that everything out of the ordinary is something scary, something that should somehow be mended, that should somehow be remedied. Now, how does that work? We create heroes, Heracles in this instance, who kills brutality, animal brutality, just exterminating the thing, sort of restoring the natural order of man's dominance. Same picture here. We have St. George here slaying the dragon. The dragon representing brutality, representing dumb, instinct-driven cruelty, and the St. George is restoring, order as it should be. And so here we have it. Man is the dominator. Man is self-conscious. Man is creative. We dominate whatever is around us, and we understand it. And you know why? We have been given the light of self-consciousness. Now, let's return to what history is. Here we have 2 historians with that take on what history is. And you know what? They're well-known, famous historians, and way more learned than I am. Peter Berg, saying history, he's a professor at Cambridge, by the way, history is the study of human societies. And then we have R.G. Collingwood writing a kind of research or inquiry into the res gestae, actions of human beings that have been done in the past. What the historian is looking for is processes of thought. All history is the history of thought, assuming that we are the only species that thinks and animals do not. I'm now sort of going to deconstruct this image, and Miss Maggie, if you could.
Yes. Is the movie?
Yes. Let's go and meet Alex, the parrot. What we're going to find is that our cultural assumption on what animals are is not particularly helpful. And that I aim to demonstrate using a couple of pictures, a couple of short videos.
Alex, what matter?
Whoa.
That's right. How many?
2.
That's right. You're a good
Can I go
boy.
back?
No,
Can I go
sweetie.
back?
No, you can't go back yet. You gotta.
You want some water?
All right. Do you want some water, or are you just asking to interrupt? You're just asking to interrupt. I know
Go
you.
back?
I know you. Hey. Look. What color bigger? What color bigger?
Green.
Green. Oh, you're a good boy. Okay, Alex, look. Look what I got for you. Hey, look. Look at all these neat toys. Look. Hey, look, can you tell me, on the tray, how many green block? Green block.
2.
Good parrot. 2 green block. 2. Good parrot. One of the things Alex doesn't have is a knee-jerk response to the types of objects that you present him. He can look at 2 objects and answer several different types of questions about those objects, or he can look at a novel collection of items and answer questions about that collection. What this shows us is that he really understands what those questions mean.
The whole thing.
Listen, Alex.
Kitchen.
You're
That's
right.
right,
Good
teacher.
boy.
Alex describing objects. Alex saying, Polly want more than a cracker.
This what you want?
I want banana. Carrot.
Good birdie.
I want corn. Soft corn.
Soft corn, good parrot. We've got rock corn, that's dried corn, and we've got soft corn too.
Cold.
It's cold, yes, it's cold. It's from the refrigerator.
Go pick up corn.
Well, no, I'm not going to pick up the corn you threw down.
Using his beak, he could tell you what matter objects were made of.
Let's hear it.
Rock.
That's
Good boy.
rock.
What matter?
What matter, Alex?
Wood.
That's
good
right.
boy.
Whoa.
That's right. Whoa.
And amazingly, on a tray, he could tell you the number of squares from the number of balls, the number of each color.
How many blue blocks?
4.
4 is right.
Good parrot.
He's choosing from among all the possible answers. Remember, he sees this object. If he was giving a knee-jerk response, he would say paper every time he saw this thing.
He tried to restrain himself when student parrots like this one got it wrong.
What matter?
Then Alex would interject with his equivalent of duh.
What matter?
Wood.
As parrots go, he was simply Einstein. When we were there, even Einstein got hungry.
Well, you're the boy.
Want to go eat dinner?
I know. It's time to eat dinner, sweetie. I know it's time, but we have to do one more chore, okay?
And then Alex declared it was over.
Want to go back?
You want to go back?
And now, somewhere in parrot heaven, the angels are marveling at what God wrought. Alex the parrot has died at the age of 31.
And I've got a second video for you as well. That will do further damage to our traditional view on what animals are.
The chimps have discovered how to crack open nuts using stones. The technique is remarkably sophisticated and perhaps more than any other behavior reminds us of our Stone Age past. Cracking open the hard nut requires the correct toolkit, and they're very careful about selecting stones. One as an anvil, the other as a hammer. Biologists here have numbered the stones to find out which ones the chimps like to use. The anvil must be levelled properly, and then the nut placed without rolling off. Each blow is finely judged to crack the casing without crushing the nut inside. The younger ones, even though they're not actually doing it, seem to be completely absorbed in the activity and watching the others. They only very occasionally get to actually taste the nut. The main reason these young chimps copy the others is that it gives them a sense of identity and belonging. I suppose it's sort of the equivalent of kids playing at cookery. Finally, he's about 2.5, and although she obviously doesn't really know what's going on, she knows that those stones have some significance. But it'll be another 6-7 years before she really develops the technique, and even then she'll carry on refining it right into adulthood. There are several stages to learning how to crack nuts. First, learn to handle one object. Then, try combining two objects. And finally, put all three together in the right order. The primate hands which originally evolved for climbing trees now can order and manipulate objects, which changes the way their brain works. And the clue to this is that, like us, chimps are either right-handed or left-handed. For us, a preference for using one hand or the other reflects a very important step in the evolution of our brains. The two halves became specialised, and that specialisation allowed us to develop language, imagination, and all our creative skills.
And could we then have the third one as well, please?
When we think of culture, we tend to think about material products of human civilization and/or variation of traditions, rituals, and beliefs between different human populations. And of course, these are products of human culture. But does culture distinguish humans from all other animals? Are any other animals cultural? If so, what makes humans so different? Evolutionary anthropologists are uncovering the mysteries to these questions. The term culture is actually quite new and was developed during the Enlightenment as a way for European colonialists to describe differences in human behavior in different parts of the world. As the concept evolved, many scholars thought it to be a defining characteristic of our species. But is it? Are there behavioral patterns in animal communities that evolve and are transmitted in analogous ways to the patterns observed within and between human societies? Clues that we were not the only species to possess culture came from early studies of our closest relatives, chimpanzees. In the 1960s, primatologist Jane Goodall observed chimpanzees at Gombe Stream National Park making and using tools. At the time, humans were defined as man the toolmaker. After she told her mentor, paleoanthropologist Louis Leakey, about her discovery, he said, "We must now redefine man, redefine tool, or accept chimpanzees as human." Of course, under any taxonomic classification scheme, it would be silly to redefine chimpanzees as humans. So we instead reclassified our species. We were now specified as bipedal hominids with big brains. We were no longer the only species that made and used tools, but did that also mean we were not the only species to possess culture? As the top evolutionary scientists in the field pondered this question, it became evident that culture was more complex than had previously been thought. What was culture exactly? And if our closest relatives made tools, what else could they do? Researchers, without a clear grasp on what it meant to call a non-human cultural, started to refer to chimpanzee behavior as pre-cultural or proto-cultural. However, others were convinced that their behavioral observations indicated true cultural behavior. But if primatologists were to attempt to break down the barriers between the human and animal worlds, they first had to understand what it was they were defining. Primatologists proposed that culture was a combination of socially learned traits that distinguished one group from another. Although still debated, both biologists and anthropologists now broadly accept some version of this definition. Now that there was a growing acceptance that animal culture existed, and primatologists had a working definition, researchers wanted to find out how complex chimpanzee culture was. In order to do that, they employed the method of exclusion. By using the method of exclusion, primatologists would document behaviors between groups and then infer whether what they were observing was cultural by eliminating any possible ecological and/or genetic explanation for its occurrence. A big breakthrough in this research came in 1999, when several evolutionary scientists from 6 different long-term chimpanzee field sites compiled their behavioral data and attempted to determine how much cultural variation there was between chimpanzee populations in Africa. Their results were startling. They found 39 different behavioral patterns, including tool usage, grooming, and courtship behaviors that appeared to be socially learned cultural traditions. For example, chimpanzees at Badongo, Mahal, and Thai Forest performed rain dances, whereas chimpanzee groups including those at Gombe and Cabal had developed cultural traditions for inspecting wounds and removing parasites. There were also characteristic cultural feeding patterns. Chimpanzees in the west broke open nuts with anvils, and chimpanzees in the east appeared to fish for termites more frequently. Social traditions also varied culturally. Some groups had different clasping hand grooming rituals, and other groups had complex knocking knuckle courtship rituals. These results indicated that not only were chimpanzees cultural, but the complexity of their culture was without parallel throughout the rest of the animal kingdom. However, these data also revealed more interesting questions. For example, if chimpanzees have such complex cultural traditions, then what makes humans so different? Or maybe you have a...
Okay, so if an animal is not really an animal, so it seems, we've always taken animals as one single category of beings that were mute and passive and made to be dominated, and now this tells us they're not really. There are massive differences between animals as for IQ, as for skills, and as for culture even. So what have we just seen, and what do these pictures tell us? Hey, first of all, some animals are more intelligent than others. Secondly, some animals have a who, what, where, and when memory. Thirdly, there are even animals that appear to have a self-conscious of some sort. Fourthly, and this is crucial for culture, we've seen that technological skills, but also behavior characteristics, can be transferred from one individual to the other. Animals seem to learn traits from the other, or from all the generations. And then they even make tools, and taking various steps to create tools. Hence, I hope I've by now proven that our old take on what animals are has been sufficiently broken down. And so how useful is it to use the term animals to describe all these species? Well, you know what? The term animal really seems to originate from our own self-image. We are man, they are the other. And we've now seen that the other doesn't really exist. Only if we need to define who we are. It seems really that the term animal is rather useless, certainly in a cultural point of view, and that is exactly what history is. We've seen, I think, how history always revolved around the oppositional relationship between human and animal. And we've now seen, I think, I hope convincingly, how the animal does not exist and has never existed. What about the other side of the equation? Man, humanity. Does humanity exist? And if so, are we the self-conscious, self-aware, rational, creative, dominant crown of creation? Well, I think by the tone of that rhetorical question, you probably know the answer, guys. No. You know what? Yes, we're smart, we're intelligent. Yes, technological knowledge can be accumulated throughout time. Generations stand on the shoulders of others, previous generations, in the sense that we have elaborated on their technologies. However, it seems we are destroying our habitat and we know it. We are aware of the fact that we are destroying our world. We are over-consuming our world. You know what? We know it. And interestingly, and this is the point, from a rational point of view, we all understand what we're doing. Yet, our instincts overrule our ratio in this sense. We don't seem to be able to find the emergency button to stop this. It seems as if our selfishness, our individual selfishness, is overruling our very highly rated human ratio. We are destroying our world and we know it. We are the self-destructive ape, ladies and gentlemen. Despite the optimism of the inventors of the big history concept that we heard last time. What about our collective learning, Mrs. Bailey? Well, it is true that technological knowledge has accumulated throughout time, and other learning, however, has not. Civilizations have collapsed. And there are several examples throughout time of writing disappearing altogether, and we call them dark ages. I think it is pretty obvious to say that there is large cultural, linguistic diversity. So, rather than accumulating knowledge and making steady progress, our cultural diversity could lead to hatred or even racism and genocide. So much for the rational crown of creation, it seems. And you know what? We congratulate ourselves on the fact that we are the brightest of all, that we have these cognitive abilities. However, are we not really instinct-driven? Well, check out this video. It is worrying.
Every day we're bombarded with advertising messages. Companies telling us their products are the fastest, shiniest, safest, even coolest. But do they work? The answer may lie in a field called neuromarketing.
Brands used to push messages out to consumers via television commercials, and then the naive consumer would then dash off allegedly to a store and buy the product. The world's fundamentally changed.
Ben Langdon used to be a traditional ad man before taking the reins of Seren, a London firm that gets inside customers' heads.
I know how people's brains think, and I know how they literally, physically respond to digital communication and interactive devices. Historically, I simply knew what people told me they thought.
Seren's studio director Spen is about to find out exactly what I think. This headset will track my response to a series of websites by reading my brainwaves.
So you can measure things like engagement, boredom, frustration, excitement, which would be valuable for us because all of those are unconscious emotional states.
First website, Apple. The sliding images clearly have my attention, but my engagement levels drop off fairly quickly.
So the yellow line is the short-term excitement.
Samsung's site launches with the sun-kissed photos of children, and that seems to have my attention.
It's really important that you have this kind of human factor. Especially for advertising, it's very interesting to see if you play around with multiple versions of the same ad. So even just like replacing a male model with a female model, or just changing the colors, or the way the product is displayed can have a massive impact on how people respond.
So whether you think a product is smart, sexy or cool, companies may know before you do.
Okay, thanks. What I think this shows you, dear ladies and gentlemen, but then again you already knew this, it appears you have some kind of consuming button somewhere in your brains. A button that can be hit by people designing adverts, designing campaigns to sell, to flog products. And you know what? They know how to hit the button, and they're successful at that. It's what drives our capitalism. You know what? It seems really that rather than being the rational, self-conscious, autonomous human being, it seems we're instinct-driven, just like apes. We want to have, and once the buy button's been hit, we have to have something. And I'm pretty certain that many of you are familiar with this buy button, are you not? Weren't they flogging pizzas the other week at €3? And I'm pretty certain they knew how to hit your pizza button. So collective learning, well, I'm not buying it. Humanity as the rational crown of creation, I'm not buying it. What does that do with history? Well, you know what, history started as a sort of hobby project of white, wealthy males. In the 19th century, and they were mainly interested in their own past. So they were interested in how white, wealthy males lived. And that's what they studied. So they looked at, hey, white males taking decisions, white diplomacy, white culture. Women had very little to do with that. Interestingly, every society studies its own history in a sense that we use our own set of self-images and we use that to ask new questions about history. And hey, we happen to live in a society that is interested in all sorts of things and not just white males. And so that means that we're asking all sorts of different things from history. We have different interests, like economy, or you know what, not just upper class and elite, but also middle class, or even lower class. We have, or we take an interest in women in history being good. And we also do in ethnic minorities. It's no longer just a white, male-dominated sport. Well, our recent history, of course, our recent focus is very much on globalization, and that's why you took the TTO program in the first place, isn't it? It's about the environment. I mean, I'm not the only one calling ourselves a self-destructive ape, am I? It's about climate, it's about environment, hence it is our focus on who we are and where we live in that make us, or that makes us ask certain questions about our history. We take new directions in history. We're now interested in the history of environment, the history of man dealing with his or her climate. So where does it take all of us? Let us sort of combine these strands. We've seen how the oppositional relationship between man and humanity does not exist. There is no such thing as animal, and you know what? Man as the dominant self-aware creator is a myth. Would it not be time to take a biological turn in history? Now, what do I mean with that? Why don't we accept that we are emotional, irrational, hormone-driven, or instinct-driven entities. And you know what? Our rationalism is in a sense, self-deceiving. And as we've also seen, why don't we recognize scientifically proven cognitive strengths of animals? Animals have an IQ, animals have an intelligence. Okay, so where does that bring us? We usually study history by seeking, selecting, interpreting, comparing sources, and we contrast them as well, to find out what has happened in the past. But then, how can we possibly study the history of animals? Well, obviously, from archaeological sources, it would be able to determine what they ate, what their diets were, what their habitats were, what their size was, what their physical condition was like. And on top of that, we have man-made sources that show us what their relationship with man was like. We see or we know our own take on animals, and so how animals are perceived. That you could take as part of history as well. But what about how animals perceive the world themselves and themselves? How did they perceive themselves? Could we possibly find ways and methods to know more about how animals saw themselves? Well, I think there are some historians who believe that there are some man-made sources that, believe it or not, actually show us the perception of animals themselves. History as seen through the eyes of animals. Well, the problem with that is, and I think you'll agree with me, you know, as a white male from Hoofddorp, it is difficult enough to sort of crawl inside the mind of, say, a Sudanese slave somewhere in the 2nd century, or, you know, an 18th century Inuit. How could we possibly know how an 18th century Inuit saw the world, or how a Sudanese slave from the 2nd century AD saw the world? That is difficult enough in itself, even when you do have written sources. So how could I, as an historian, possibly approach, say, an animal from the 17th century? Well, mind you, and this is something that Ms. Baker pointed out as well, for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millennia, or even millions of years, mammals and Homo, as in our species, walked hand in hand. And only recently, or relatively recently, guys, honestly, you can please sort of show some interest. Only relatively recently did our ways split at some stage. And we still share emotions like sensations like hunger, or thirst, or happiness, or stress, or anxiety. Now, obviously, because of this, there are many historians who oppose the notion of animal history. They say, you know what, only humans understand culture. Only humans feel a connection to past ancestors. And they still stress the uniqueness of human intelligence and human self-consciousness, despite the new research by biologists that we just saw. Now, the future will tell whether animal history will become a relevant, thriving field of historical research, and whether or not animal history would one day make it into the history books of your kids, for example, and that I, as a history teacher, would one day, like say, 25 years' time, be teaching animal history to, say, your kids. Who knows? I'm not convinced. Personally, I'm not convinced that the concept of animal history has great explanatory power. It remains artificial, and we can only approach animal culture and thinking and emotions through our own interference. However, and this is where I conclude, What I am convinced of is that the concept of man as a rational creator is obsolete, is old-fashioned. And we should take into account our own urges, our own instincts, our own essence as mammals when we evaluate our own history, instead of just seeing ourselves as the rational creator. And that is what I conclude. And I do thank you for your attention.